Thank you, Acting President. I move that it be an instruction to the committee that they have the power to consider an amendment and a new clause to amend the Road Safety Act 1986 to provide that medicinal cannabis that does not impair driving must be treated in the same manner as other prescription drugs.
The question is the motion be agreed to. All of that opinion say aye. Those against? I think the ayes have it.
I move my amendment to the Roads and Ports Legislation Amendment Road Safety Act and Other Matters Bill. And my amendment is to amend and a new clause to be proposed in committee. Is that correct? No.
Thank you. Do you want to speak to that clause? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I just want to acknowledge Minister Shing's commentary in respect to the closed-circuit driving trial that is currently underway, and that we are in a predicament here where we've had medicinal cannabis legal for nearly 10 years and trying to find a balance there. But obviously Legalise Cannabis has advocated for medicinal cannabis patients to be treated like any other patient on prescription medication. And I think the fact that we are talking about prescription medication, and I do take issue with looking at the fact that claims that medicinal cannabis patients then do top up with recreational cannabis. I could also point to the fact that someone that may be prescribed a medication such as Valium or benzodiazepine may also find themselves topping up their medication. So I think that looking at those distinctions might not be as relative anymore when we're talking about looking at that distinction of prescription medication and patients' rights. Thank you.
Minister?
Deputy President, thanks Ms Payne for that. I just want to, again, perhaps for avoidance of doubt, indicate I wasn't suggesting in the course of my sum up that this might well be a top up with recreational cannabis. It might well be a level that exceeds a prescribed dose. So this is, again, we just don't know. And so without knowing, it's then very difficult to understand what the nature or the extent of impairment might be in any situation where medicinal cannabis has perhaps been prescribed to a certain amount, that a top up, which may occur because of a recreational volume, but may actually occur because of a prescribed volume that is brought forward in dose, for example. So I would hate for you to conclude that, in fact, I was suggesting that prescription cannabis was only ever sitting alongside in that 44% use of something other than prescribed volumes or amounts of cannabis as prescribed.
Are there any further questions? Mr Limbrick?
Thank you, Deputy President. The Libertarian Party will be supporting this amendment. I note some of the minister's comments earlier about, the science of this and testing impairment. I would like to make the point that the whole reason for roadside testing is meant to be to test for impairment, because that's what everyone cares about, is whether or not someone's impaired, not whether they have some substance in their body. They care whether they're a danger to other drivers on the road. And it's very unfortunate that in the case of THC that it stays in the body for a long period of time and is detectable well after someone is impaired. And I would say that if we're looking for the gap in the science was when roadside drug testing was introduced in the first place, where they introduced a testing mechanism which did not test for impairment, continues to not test for impairment, and many people are very unjustly being penalised, having their licences taken away, being put through all sorts of trauma, and they pose no risk to other drivers on the road because they are not impaired, but we don't know that because they never actually test, or rarely test, for impairment. I've been told in the last term of Parliament that the reason that they don't test for impairment is, even though we have an impairment test which is rarely used, is because it's very onerous on the police force and takes a long time. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of stuff involved. They don't like doing it. The roadside drug testing test is a lot easier when you can just test someone. You don't need to actually prove that they're impaired. This is an injustice that should never have come about. It should never have happened. And I don't actually care whether it's prescription medication or not, or indeed, some illegal drug. What actually matters for road safety is whether or not someone's impaired. That's the only thing that we should be testing for, and that's not happening in Victoria at the moment. I acknowledge that the government is doing these tests at the moment to try and come up with some sort of test for impairment. But in the meantime, we have very large numbers of people who use cannabis for medicinal purposes. I've met many of these people, people who have lost their licences, people who could benefit from medicine who are choosing not to take that medicine and taking more dangerous medicines, such as opiates, which they don't test for and which do cause impairment. But for some unknown reason, well, actually I know the reason. The reason that the government doesn't insist that we test for opiates and benzos as well as cannabis is because there is a social stigma on cannabis, and there doesn't seem to be a social stigma on opiates and benzos. The company that produces the roadside drug tests that they use at the moment also produce another one for a very similar cost that tests for opiates and benzodiazepines. The government has not instructed the police to use this. They do not use it because they could be pulling half the drivers off the road. That's why. And they're not going to introduce that because there will be an absolute uproar. But as the number of medical cannabis patients increases, the noise from these patients that are suffering this injustice will increase over time, and it will get to the point, and I think even the government acknowledges this, that's why they've agreed to the test, this roadside testing stuff that they're talking about. It will get to the point where it is unbearable, and the government will have to face the fact that what is happening is an injustice.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? Ms Copsey.
Thank you, Deputy President. The Greens will be supporting this amendment and thank Ms Payne for her continued advocacy on this matter and the reminder to the Chamber and to the government of its importance, and we hope to see it successful in its intent in the very near future before the end of this term.
The question is that Ms Payne's amendment number 1, which tests her amendment number 2, be agreed to. Those voting in favour of the amendments, I invite you to stand in your place now. Thank you. You can resume your seats. Those voting against, I invite you to stand in your place now and indicate my vote is with the noes. Thank you. You can resume your seats. The results of the division is ayes 7, noes 28. Therefore, the amendment is lost.